recording is going.
All right, great, fantastic. The recording is going. Thank you very much, Cal. That's Kyle. This is MCM, McMinnville Community Media, and my name is Tom Timbrooks. I am running for the U.S. House of Representatives for Oregon's 6th Congressional District. I am a member of the Republican Party, and my political motto is, make Oregon's 6th Congressional District America's greatest congressional district. And I plan on doing that with jobs, mostly with jobs and everything. I want to exploit Oregon's natural resources, but mostly the human resources. See, Oregon's 6th Congressional District is a fantastic district for somebody like myself, a manufacturing engineer, because here's what goes on. I mean, you've got Intel, you've got Analog Devices, Lam Research, you've got so many technological companies, and I live in McMinnville. And in McMinnville, we have several corporations they're manufacturing corporations, and these places they're high tech. So the 6th Congressional District, I think, is already one of the best congressional districts in America, but they need somebody like myself and my ideas on how to develop it so that we can be a much, much wealthier district, a much more productive district, okay? Now, today I want to talk about something that has been, fascism, okay? Fascism. Everything's fascism. This guy's a fascist, that guy's a fascist, this is fascism. Our government, people are saying our government is fascist and everything. And a problem I have with that is, you ask somebody, well, what's fascism? And they'll say, well, if I need to explain it to you, you wouldn't understand, or something like that. People use the word fascist and fascism and the whole concept of fascism and everything, and say, well, like Hitler, like Mussolini. You say, well, where did fascism start? How did fascism develop? Because it wasn't just like, in the timeline of here's man, no fascism, then all of a sudden, boom, fascism. It wasn't like that. It developed over a period of time, over a period of civilizations, political philosophies built on each other, economic philosophies built on each other, all this stuff built on each other, and eventually developed a concept of fascism. All right? Now, Antifa, anti-fascism, is actually a movement. It's a movement in America and around the world. But a lot of people don't realize Antifa is actually a movement that started before World War II in Germany, because there were people in Germany who did not like the idea of fascism. They didn't like the idea of socialism. They didn't like the idea of a collective anything. They wanted to keep fascism from controlling Germany. And they almost were able to, and then Hitler and Mussolini happened, and bad stuff, but the Antifa movement now actually has its roots in pre-World War II Germany. Now, it's changed a lot since then, okay? Now, everything is fascist. Okay, everything is fascism according to these people. If you don't do what we want you to do, you're a fascist. And that seems kind of ironic to me, because saying that is actually a fascist philosophy. But anyways, that's what I want to talk about today, and I'm going to develop a working definition of fascism. It may not meet your textbook definition of fascism, but it's a good working definition of fascism. So I'm going to share that with you. I'm going to talk about it with you, and I'm going to tell you exactly how I intend, if I am elected to Congress, how I intend on making sure that fascism is avoided in American politics, okay? So let me get in on this right now. There I am. Dang, I'm a good-looking guy. So make Oregon's 6th congressional district America's greatest congressional district. I told you that, and I'm going to make that happen. And like I said, the subject of today is everything is fascism. Yep. So what is fascism? Essentially, it's a political system that enforces unity through authoritarian control, nationalism, and indoctrination. Now, what does that mean? Well, it uses access to economic life, including gainful employment as leverage, rewarding loyalty, and punishing dissent, okay? And those are a bunch of words, and okay, what does that mean? Okay, I mean, these are good definitions of fascism, but defining it like this isn't really understanding it. Okay, you could define something without understanding it. So let's work towards understanding what it is, okay? One of the ways fascism maintains control is by tying survival to loyalty. If you accept the ideology, you'll get a job, a wage, and a place in society. If you resist, you'll be cut off. Fascism doesn't just demand obedience, it buys it through employment and punishes disobedience by taking it away. And doesn't that kind of sound a little bit like the progressive left? Okay, I mean, with cancel culture and like this, you had that actress Gina Carano, and she's a professional boxer and fighter and everything, an amazing fighter, absolutely beautiful woman, terrific actress, and she gets on the Disney Channel and she makes a statement about her political beliefs, and boom, she's canceled. Okay, now that in itself is not fascism, because fascism is a political system. Okay, what Disney was doing is not fascism. What Disney was doing was preemptively reacting to what they saw as a potential political threat. Gina Carano may have said something that could be politically insensitive to some of their viewers, so they figured, let's go ahead and get rid of her because we don't want any of our viewers to be offended by her political statements. And this is something you learn in your work life, is never make any political statement about anything. And it's a shame that you can't do that, because I mean, you'd like to believe that you can, but the free market is what the free market is. And people will watch you or not watch you. They'll consume your merchandise or not consume your merchandise based on your political beliefs. And if they don't like your political beliefs, they're not going to watch you. They're not going to, that's just the entertainment industry. And it's stupid and it's immature, but it is not actually fascism, because fascism isn't part of the free market. Fascism is a political system, okay? If you have a political system, something where the government engages itself in making sure that your political beliefs align with their political beliefs, and if your political beliefs align with theirs, then you're going to do all right economically, you'll get a job. If your political leanings do not agree with the government's political leanings, then the government will make sure that you don't prosper, okay? That is fascism. It is a political system, not an economic system, okay? The thing that Disney did with Gina Carano, that was just the free market, okay? Disney was preemptively reacting the way they thought the free market would want them to react. Okay, they were doing what they figured their consumers would want them to do by getting rid of Gina Carano, okay? That is not fascism, because it's not political, it's economic, all right? So getting back to this here, Why is it the people who claim to hate fascism the most, Antifa, can't define fascism? Okay, now, like I said, if you walk up to one of these Antifa people, you go to an Antifa person, you say, well, you don't like fascism. No, we don't like fascism. We hate fascism. Okay, define fascism. Well, I don't have to answer your questions. And if you don't understand what fascism is, you can't possibly understand. You should already know. Google it. Okay, so they put the ball in your court. So instead of them actually having a definitive objective, they just stand against everything that anybody, and if you're not one of them, then you're against them. So they define fascism as anybody or anything, any ideology that doesn't completely agree with everything they are doing. So if you say to an Antifa person, I don't think you should be out on the street at 2 o'clock in the morning blaring your sound, your music, your sound boxes, everything. I don't think you should be doing that at 2 o'clock in the morning because it's disturbing the neighbors. They're going to say, well, you're a fascist because you're preventing us from doing our work, and your neighbors can sleep with earplugs and a blindfold. Okay? Our work is more important than your peace. And it's not. And they say, well, this is civil disobedience. And it's like, well, that's fine, but if it's going to be civil disobedience, if it's going to be a protest, if you're going to observe your First Amendment right to gather, see, the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, it guarantees the right for freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom of speech, and most of all, it guarantees the right of the citizen to gather in public, to give a list of grievances to a government or a government organization. So Antifa, when they hang out in front of the ICE facility here in Portland, they are observing their constitutional right. The First Amendment guarantees them the right to gather and address a government organization and provide them with a list of grievances. But there's something in society, a reasonable effort. There is a reasonable method. I mean, their right to protest, their right to provide the government organization with their list of grievances, there are reasonable limits on that. And the fact that they refuse to be reasonable, I mean, that kind of makes me think that Antifa is really pushing the fascist agenda, because in a political system where if you don't agree with me, then you're wrong. I mean, that political system is fascism. Not allowing anybody else to talk, not allowing anybody else to have an opinion, not respecting somebody else's opinion. That goes completely against the constitutional republic that we have. The principles of the constitutional republic in America are that everybody, no matter who, no matter minority, majority, whatever, everybody should have an equal voice. Everybody should be heard. Everybody has the right to be heard. Okay, but people also have the right to rest, to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And if I talked about this in a previous video, where you have constitutional rights, but if what you're doing technically is in accordance with your constitutional rights, but you're preventing somebody else from their life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, then what you're doing is you're violating the principles of the constitutional republic, you're violating the principles upon which the United States was founded. The United States, our founding document, the Declaration of Independence, declares all human beings to be equal and to have inalienable rights provided by their Creator, by God, not by the king, not by the government, but by God. You have inalienable rights. The right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. If what Antifa is doing is preventing people from observing their rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, then yeah, what they're doing is constitutional. They are obeying, they're observing their constitutional right, the First Amendment right, to gather in public and deliver a list of grievances against the government. But that being done, I mean, that having been done, which it has been done, they should vacate the premises and let people live their lives. But they're refusing to do that. And their whole idea behind that is, hey, if you are not with us, you're against us. If you're not with Antifa, then you must be fascists. I was going to say, if you're not with Antifa, you must be IFA. Antifa. Okay, so you're fa, whatever. And anyways, so, you know, this is the problem I have with a lot of the Antifa people, is that anytime I see them on YouTube, and I'll watch some of the YouTube videos, some of the people follow the Antifa people around, and they say, hey, define fascism. I don't have to answer your questions. Well, you should be able to define fascism if you are against it. Well, if you don't know what it is, Google it. It's your responsibility. You know? So yeah, this is why I really don't have a lot of respect for them. I really don't appreciate them. I don't like what they're doing because they're stepping on other people's rights, and every American citizen has the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. If you observing your constitutional rights are preventing them from observing their human rights, then what you're doing is wrong. Okay, it's immoral, it's indignant, it's uncivilized, and it's wrong. You shouldn't be doing it. Okay, so this is one of the problems I have with Antifa. Okay, so understanding government. The most important things to understand about government, number one, the road to ruin is paved with good intentions. And I was just discussing this, okay? Antifa has great intentions. They want to get rid of fascism. And I don't blame them. Fascism is bad, okay? So what they're doing, you know, like I said, the road to ruin is paved with good intentions. Their intentions are good, but they're destroying a good thing, which, you know, like I said, Antifa was founded before World War II in Germany specifically to prevent Hitler from coming to power. They did not like fascism. They did not like Mussolini. They did not like Hitler. They did not want fascism to destroy Germany. Well, what happened, and fascism did destroy Germany. It destroyed a lot of things, killed a lot of people, and they were right to hate fascism. So the whole Antifa movement starting back before World War II, that's a good thing. It's a wonderful thing. And these people in Europe and in the United States, Canada, Mexico, I guess wherever Antifa is, they have the best of intentions, but their execution is flawed. They are destroying a program that had the best of intentions. Because the road to ruin is paved with good intentions. And this is what Antifa is doing, is they are causing the ruin of a program that once had the best of intentions. Okay? And this is something you need to know about government. One of the most important things to understand about government is the road to ruin is paved with good intentions. Every person who goes to Washington, D.C. has the best of intentions. Every person that goes to Washington, D.C. is thinking, I can fix the problems. And me too. I'm thinking, I can fix problems. And I have great intentions. But I understand the road to ruin is paved with good intentions. So, see, I understand that my good intentions combined with really, really bad execution could cause more problems than we have right now. So in trying to fix the problems, we could actually cause bigger problems. And that's something I understand. And so in trying to fix the problems, I will understand that you can possibly go too far. Your execution could be flawed. If your execution is flawed, then you're causing more problems than you're fixing. Stop doing it. And that's one of the advantages of being in a constitutional republic, is that you can stop doing something if it's causing more problems than it's fixing, okay? And so this other thing here, the government serves the people, not an agenda. And you see, that's an important concept to understand there, because, like I said, every person goes to Washington, D.C. with the best of intentions, and they have an agenda. Me too. I have an agenda. My agenda is to make Oregon's 6th congressional district America's greatest congressional district. And I have some ideas on how to make that happen. But if any of those ideas cause problems with the rest of the United States, if any of those ideas cause problems with Oregon, if any of those ideas are found objectionable by any of the other people, well, then there's always the option of compromise. Okay, so those are things that you need to understand about government. One, understand the road to ruin is paved with good intentions. Number two, understand you are there to serve the people, not your personal agenda, not the Republican agenda, not the MAGA agenda, not the Democrat agenda. You are there to serve the people. And the representative's main job, the representative goes to Washington, D.C. with one thing in mind: bring money back, federal funds, bring federal funds back to your congressional district so that your congressional district can do things that benefit the whole United States of America. Everybody in the country will benefit from what you're doing in your congressional district. That is the big reason, the number one reason why you are going to Washington, D.C. is to get federal funds back to your district. It's not to follow the conservative or liberal agenda. It's not to follow the Republican or Democrat agenda. It is to serve the people. And remember, in serving the people, the road to ruin is paved with good intentions. So always have compromise available. Use compromise as much as you can, because just because you think something is the greatest thing in the world doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Okay, so yeah, that's the way I feel about the whole government thing, is, those two rules. Keep those two things in mind. And let's get back to these guys. Sometimes I run out of thoughts. I've got these slides. Okay, so political versus economic systems. Political, organized power and decision making. That's what a political system does. It organizes power and decision making. Who rules and how are laws made? And that's what we do. Who is the ruler? Well, the citizen is the ruler. How are laws made? Through the representation of the people. Okay, economic systems organize production and distribution. That's who makes what and who gets what. Okay, and this is the average citizen. If you're a beer maker, you make and distribute beer. If you're a shoemaker, same thing. If you're an automobile manufacturer, same thing, okay? So the political system decides who rules and how laws are made. The economic system, who makes what and who gets what, okay? Fascism is a political system that extends into economics to enforce loyalty. Now, you see, the way we have our system set up in America is we have a political system, and the political system decides the laws, how the laws are made, who's in charge, like that. We also have an economic system, the open market, the free market, the open economy, the unplanned economy, okay? And these two things being as separate as possible, they prevent the government from utilizing its power to ensure that people who do not agree with the government don't get jobs. Okay, the government can never be allowed to decide that because this person doesn't agree with a political agenda, that person shouldn't have a job. All right, that would be fascism. If fascism is where the government comes in and says, if you don't agree with me, you don't get a job. Off to the gulag with you, okay? People have to be able in a Republican democracy, in a constitutional republic, people have to be able to disagree with any agenda, with any ideology. The people who don't like the MAGA ideology, you have to be perfectly free to disagree with the MAGA ideology. It cannot be a condition of your employment. And that means if you're a government worker also. If you're a government worker and you disagree with the MAGA agenda, fine. Fine, disagree with the MAGA. It should not cost you your job, okay? If it does cost you your job, if you disagreeing with the MAGA agenda causes Donald Trump or one of the MAGA Republicans to decide you don't need your job anymore, then yeah, that would be fascism. Okay, because that would be a political system causing you to suffer economically because you do not agree with their political agenda. Okay, but if you lose your job, if you lose your government job because of some other reason, and that reason is a legitimate reason, then it's not fascism. So, there's a possibility. I guess it's open to interpretation. If you can prove that the reason you lost your job was because the government didn't like your, the fact that you were against their political agenda, then yeah, you've proven that the government acted in an unconstitutional and fascist way, and so you have some kind of problem, with the government, grievance with the government. Yeah, anyways, let me get back to these slides because I'm nothing without my slides, man. I have to have my slides. Okay, so fascism, a political system that extends into economics to enforce loyalty, and that's what I'm saying. If the government can prevent you from having a job because you disagree with their politics, that's fascism, okay? So human nature and sharing. People do not naturally live by socialism's motto, from each according to ability, to each according to need. In scarcity, people hoard rather than share, and in abundance, people still accumulate beyond need. Voluntary, large-scale sharing requires force, norms, or incentives, okay? I say that a lot, don't I? I say, okay, I really got to work on that. Why socialism needs authority. To make socialism work, government must know everybody's abilities, who can produce what, and everybody's needs, who requires what. Remember, it's from each according to ability, to each according to needs. So who can produce what and who requires what, and that requires massive central control. Socialism, in practice, drifts towards authoritarianism and totalitarianism. When government controls prosperity, if government controls the means of production, it controls jobs, who works and who doesn't, wages, who prospers and who struggles, access to resources. Prosperity becomes conditional. Loyalty equals reward with opportunity. Dissent equals punished with exclusion. From socialism to fascist characteristics. Socialism seeks equality but requires enforcement. Enforcement creates authoritarian structures. Add nationalism plus indoctrination and enforcement becomes fascism. Fascism is when prosperity itself is weaponized to enforce ideology. Like I said, if the government comes along and says, you can't have a job because you don't agree with our ideology, boom. That government has slipped into fascism. Okay? That is, I keep saying okay. I got to work on that. If a government says you can't have a job because you don't agree with our ideology, that is fascism. That's wrong. It's unconstitutional. It goes against the principles of our founding document, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So, that ideology, fascist ideology, because it goes against the principles of our founding document, the Declaration of Independence, because it interferes with life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, it is un-American, and it has to be stopped. It has to be prevented. So fascism is bad for America. It is bad for our republic. It is bad for our economy. It is bad all the way around. But before you can be against fascism, you have to be able to define fascism, and you have to be able to understand beyond the definition what fascism is, how fascism acts, in order to be able to identify it. If you cannot identify fascism, if you cannot understand it, if you cannot define it, then from your perspective, everything that disagrees with you is fascism. Okay, so the working definition of fascism for me: fascism is a political system that enforces unity through authoritarian control, nationalism, and indoctrination, while using access to economic life, including gainful employment, as leverage, rewarding loyalty, and punishing dissent. That is my working definition of fascism. If somebody were to ask me, what is fascism? I could give them that definition, and I could tell those people how that definition was developed. I could show them that I understand the dynamics of fascism. I could tell them, this is why I believe what you're doing is fascism, and I could tell them why fascism is bad for America, because life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, that is why. That is what I expect. If I go up to an Antifa member and say, hello, Antifa member, I understand you're anti-fascist. Can you identify fascism? Does this meet your definition of fascism? Does this dynamic meet your understanding of how fascism develops in a government? That is the kind of thing I would expect them to know. But they are paid protesters. They aren't encouraged to learn. So essentially, they're going to show up, they're going to cause mayhem, and if you ask them any questions, they're going to say, well, we don't have to answer your questions, and if you need to know anything, Google it, look it up, try to figure it out for yourself. And that doesn't work for me, because if you're going to stand for something, you really need to be able to understand what you are against, what you're in favor of. The reason Antifa people can't define fascism is because they're promoting the fascist agenda, and that is true. They are promoting the agenda where if you don't agree with their political leanings, then they will make sure you don't have a job. They'll do everything they could possibly do to prevent you from being economically prosperous. The road to ruin. Many ideologies start with noble intentions. Antifa did start with noble intentions. When enforced through coercion and indoctrination, they end in ruin. The road to ruin is paved with good intentions, and that's what I mean. If you look in the history, you'll see this happens time and time again. 10 examples of good intentions, ruinous outcomes. Prohibition in the 1920s. The intention was to end alcohol abuse and strengthen families. The outcome was organized crime, black markets, and violence. The war on drugs, the 1970s to present. The intention was reduce drug use, protect communities. The outcome, mass incarceration, devastated families, racial disparities. The Great Society in the 1960s. This was President Johnson. The intention was to end poverty, uplift the disadvantaged communities. The outcome was dependency, weakened family structures, and generational poverty. Mao Zedong in China's Great Leap Forward, 1958 to 62. The intention was rapid modernization. His outcome was famine and tens of millions dead. Crazy. Rent control. The intention is to make housing affordable. The outcome, housing shortages, neglected properties, and disinvestment. Agricultural collectivization in the Soviet Union, 1928 to 1940s. The intention, increased food production through shared farming. The outcome was starvation, forced labor, slavery, and millions were dead. So that didn't work out too well, did it? Urban renewal in the U.S. from the 1950s to the 1970s. The intention was to modernize cities, remove blighted neighborhoods. The outcome was destroyed minority communities, displaced families, generational poverty. Cash for clunkers in 2009. The intention was to stimulate the economy, promote fuel efficiency. The outcome, destroyed functional cars, limited impact, economic waste. Okay, so the ethanol mandates in the 2000s. The intention was to reduce oil dependence and help the environment. The outcome, higher food prices, questionable environmental benefits. So that didn't work out too well either. The DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion mandates, and that's going on right now. The intention is to promote fairness and inclusion, and the outcome is division, reverse discrimination, prosperity tied to ideological conformity, and that is the fascism in the system. You see, when corporations receive incentives from the government to follow DEI policies, if your employment with that company depends on your acceptance of DEI policies, your lack of acceptance of DEI policies could cost you a job. And since DEI is a government agenda, it is a government-enforced policy, DEI is fascism. If you can't get a job because you disagree with DEI, then the government is acting in a fascist way. DEI is fascism because DEI is preventing people from enjoying life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. People who deserve jobs are being denied jobs because they disagree with the policies of DEI. DEI should be a voluntary policy. It should not be the result of government incentives. So DEI is, by its nature, fascism. Great intentions. I mean, who doesn't want diversity in the workforce? I do. I want as much diversity as possible. I want equity. I want inclusion. I want anybody who can do a job to be given an opportunity, not given, provided. I don't want to give anything out. People have to earn what they get. I want any person who can do a job to be provided an opportunity to demonstrate the skills and talent necessary to be able to do that job. And if that person, black, white, male, female, any gender, any race, any religion, any political bias, if that person shows the talent, the skills to be able to do that job, that person should not have that job taken, or that job opportunity taken away from them because of their feelings about DEI. If a person is having their economic prosperity prevented because of their feelings about DEI, then they are being victimized by fascism. So DEI is a fascist policy in our constitutional republic. So because it goes against, because DEI goes against the ideas of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, it has to be gotten rid of. It's un-American, it's unethical, it's unconstitutional. We have to get rid of it. But corporations are getting all kinds of financial incentives to push the DEI policy, so good luck with that. Now, the constitutional republic versus authoritarian systems. I've been talking about how in our constitutional republic, we have a constitutional republic. Hitler and Mussolini had authoritarian dictatorships. Okay. In a constitutional republic, and let me go with the slides because I keep saying I'm nothing about my slides. In a constitutional republic like we have, recognizes mistakes, allows debate and dissent, self-corrects through elections, courts, and free speech. And this is a good thing. It's a good thing about a constitutional republic. Now, an authoritarian, a totalitarian dictatorship, it denies mistakes. It says the mistake wasn't ours, the mistake doesn't even exist. And if you see a mistake, it's because you are misinterpreting the data. It suppresses dissent and doubles down. It says, well, if you disagree with what we're doing, we're going to punish you for disagreeing with it and finding a problem. And we're going to ship you off to the gulag. And it drives faster towards ruin. Socialism has at its heart some very decent ideas. You want to provide to everybody according to need, and you want to have people provide according to their ability. It's got good intentions, but really, really bad outcomes. Okay, because it goes against human nature, which is what I discussed earlier. So socialism will never work, and anybody who wants socialism has to prepare themselves for authoritarian rule, because whenever socialism messes up, whenever there's a big problem with socialism and you bring it to the attention of the government is going to say, no, it's not socialism, it's you. You are seeing something. You're going to be gaslit. You're going to be shipped off to the gulag and re-educated. So, yeah, if you want socialism, be prepared for authoritarian dictatorship rule, okay? Okay, in closing, fascism fascinates because it shows how easily freedom can be traded for promises of prosperity. The road to ruin is paved with good intentions. I keep saying that. The difference lies in the system. Republics can course correct. Authoritarians accelerate ruin. Now, I almost said Republicans can course correct. Our constitutional republic, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, you will recognize that an agenda is causing a problem and you can course correct. With authoritarians, you cannot course correct. You will do what they want you to do until the society is completely destroyed. Now, I want to talk about the Jimmy Kimmel cancellation. I talked about it a little bit earlier, and talked about Gina Carano and all that stuff with the cancellations and so forth. And this is why I wanted to address the subject of fascism on this episode. The people are saying, well, Donald Trump is a fascist because, well, the Republican Party is fascist because, well, ending free speech is fascist because. So I wanted to address the whole idea of fascism, what fascism is, where it comes from, and the reason it's called fascism is it's called a fasci. If you take a bundle of sticks, one stick by itself is weak, but if you bundle the sticks up, put them together, then they're strong. And that's the whole concept of the collective. The collective group is stronger together than the individual is. And that's a very important concept to understand about human nature. Human nature is to group together. In fact, one of the worst things that you can do to a human being is solitary confinement in a prison. It's cruel and it's inhuman. If human beings cannot interact with other human beings, there is actually physical, psychological trauma that happens to humans. So it is our nature to group together and act together. But we have something called economy of scale. If you have 5 or 6 people grouping together and acting as one, that makes all of the people in the group safe. If you have 100 million people all gathered together and acting as one, that's going to cause some problems because, with communication and everything, 100 million people can't act all together at the same time. That's just not possible. And trying to get them to do it, and this is one of the problems with economy of scale. What seems like a good idea at the very small scale can be a really, really bad idea in the larger scale. And what seems like a really good idea in the larger scale, it might not work in the smaller scale. So that's the whole idea of economy of scale. And economics is an interesting word. It comes from 2 Greek words, okay? The Greek words that come together to make economics is equos and nomos. Equos nomos means the rules of the house or the house rules, okay? So anytime you're talking about the economies of scale, you're talking about the rules that come along that control the dynamic of certain sizes. The dynamic of a group of 5 people is going to be different than the dynamic of a group of 100 million people. So that's what I mean, economy of scales. The rules change with the size of the operation. That's what economy of scales is, and that's why the whole idea of fascism, it sounds good to some people because it implies the fasci, which is the grouping of the sticks, which means, yes, a group of us is stronger than the individual. So, to some people, the whole fascism idea means grouping together and a whole bunch of people acting as one. But I mean, Mussolini and Hitler and all that stuff. You got to look at economy of scales here, okay? And that's what that's all about. So the claim from the left is that Jimmy Kimmel's show was canceled because Trump's administration exercised unconstitutional power, framed as authoritarian suppression of free speech. Now, the reality is the TV networks are businesses, and Kimmel's show had been struggling for ratings and revenue. Networks often look for a moment or an excuse to make a cancellation appear justified. His remarks about the Charlie Kirk assassination provided that moment. So, the fascist characteristic connection. Fascism does suppress dissent through state power. But in this case, it wasn't state power, it was market forces. And I know people are going to be arguing with me there because the FCC apparently, I don't know for certain, I wasn't there at the board meeting or anything, but apparently the FCC said something or did something, and the networks decided to react because of something the FCC said. I don't know for certain, and I was not given all the information. I've watched the news, and the news programs have differing ideas. They have differing directions, and in my experience, if you get two completely different stories, neither one of them should be taken seriously, because there's always three sides to every story. There's what these people say happened, there's what these people say happened, and then there's what really happened. Somewhere in the middle, there's what really happened. And what really happened with Jimmy Kimmel is that the market forces, it wasn't state power, it was market forces. The distinction is crucial. Authoritarian control is governed when the government decides who gets prosperity. Market accountability equals audience decides what survives by watching or not watching. Okay, so the broader lesson here is when people automatically cry fascism at events like this, it shows the fascination with fascism. The term becomes a catch-all insult instead of a precise description. So calling a person a fascist is not actually calling a person a fascist. It's saying, oh, you're a jerk, you're a butthead, I don't like you. Okay, so misusing the term hides the real story. It is not government suppression, it's not Trump silencing opposition, but a business decision driven by profit and viewership. And it's just like I said with the Gina Carano thing. Disney was reacting preemptively to something Gina Carano said because they were afraid that they would lose viewers. So the network, the Disney network, decided we might lose viewers, get rid of Gina Carano. They weren't being fascist, they were just worried about losing viewers. And the same thing with Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel is a brilliant creative spirit. I remember, I think he started out with Win Ben Stein's Money on Comedy Central, and this was back, I think it was back in the 1990s when he started out. He moved on to The Man Show, and The Man Show was just, it was a huge hit. Everybody loved The Man Show, and it went on for, I don't know, probably 4 or 5, maybe 6 seasons. And while he was doing The Man Show, he came out with Crank Yankers and Telemarketing Terrorists. Jimmy Kimmel is just an absolutely brilliant creative force when it comes to the entertainment community, and I love his stuff. I've never actually watched his show because it comes on at a difficult time for me, and I don't actually watch regular television. If I want to watch something, I'll get everything from YouTube, or there's a couple of channels that I subscribe to. There's Hulu, there's Netflix, there's just regular, what is it, Curiosity Stream and Nebula, stuff like that, YouTube. So you don't have to actually watch television in order to enjoy television, and one of the shortcomings with television is that you have to adjust your schedule to watch television. You have to stay up till 10 o'clock at night, or you have to record it. Okay, and for me, I don't like doing either of those things. I like being able to watch what I want when I want to watch it, and if it's not on, or if I have to go through some effort to record it, I'm going to miss it, because television really isn't that important to me, okay? And Jimmy Kimmel, as brilliant as he is, his talk show, it's really not that important to me. So, I'm not going to care. So, some are saying that Jimmy Kimmel's cancellation was a fascist move by Trump's administration. The reality is that his show wasn't making money. Networks are businesses, and they often wait for an excuse to pull the plug. His remarks about the Charlie Kirk assassination gave them that excuse. Fascism is when government controls prosperity to enforce ideology. This wasn't fascism. It was the market making a decision. Okay, and so, well, that's the end of my slides. Like I said, I'm nothing without my slides, so I'm gonna end it a little bit soon here. So, yeah, like I said, fascism is not. It is a political system. It is not an economic system. It's a political system that controls the economic system. Now, in the entertainment industry, you have the FCC, and certain government officials can control. They can manipulate the FCC a little bit to get the FCC to do something, but the FCC isn't going to come out and blatantly say, you have to pull this program because of this, that, and the other, unless the program has done something massively illegal. Okay, if it's encouraged some kind of terrorist act, if it's encouraged some kind of treason, if it's caused some kind of anti-American activities to happen, and the Jimmy Kimmel Show really didn't go that far. But like I said, the viewers of the Jimmy Kimmel Show have diminished a lot over the years. And it's not because Jimmy Kimmel isn't brilliant. He is. He's a terrific entertainment force in the entertainment community. And I love his stuff. I think he's great. And I hope he doesn't get completely canceled. But this should be just taken as an indicator. Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel, other people who have these talk shows, it will probably be a good idea for them to find a different way of presenting their show. YouTube is a great way to do it. There are other streaming services, Netflix. Netflix has a great David Letterman thing. Hulu hosts all kinds of weekly and nightly shows. I remember that's way back a long time ago. I would watch Battlestar Galactica because I worked on the nights when Battlestar Galactica was on, and it would come on like a week after, and then I could watch Battlestar Galactica whenever I wanted to. I didn't have to. And that's what was great about Hulu. Okay, and they could do the same thing for the Jimmy Kimmel Show. If you're going to pay $5, $10 a month for Hulu, you can watch the Jimmy Kimmel Show. You could do that with Family Guy, The Simpsons. What's Rick and Morty? I think Rick and Morty's on Hulu. I can't be certain. I forget. But anyways, yeah. So. Yeah, more than likely what's going to happen is the Jimmy Kimmel Show is still going to be on. It's just that you're going to use a service like Hulu or YouTube or Netflix in order to watch the Jimmy Kimmel Show. So, I mean, he's not being silenced. He's just being put in a different format, which might actually be a good thing for him. Because like I said, if you've got a late night television show, your viewership is going to go down because people don't want to adjust their schedules to meet, your show. They may have better things to do at night. Okay, so late night television. At one time that was the golden time, the golden hour, and everything. But it's changed over the years. Things change. It's like we say again, the economy of scale. You have a whole bunch of people doing something, and then that whole bunch of people decide they want to do something else. Economy of scale. Okay, so what seems like a great idea with a small level may not be a good idea with the big level. So this is how the entertainment industry is changing its ways. So this is probably what's going to happen. Is Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel. Was it Jimmy Kimmel? Yeah, and a couple others. They are going to have to go to a different service. So that's about it. Okay, so. Let me get to my other thing here. So, yeah, as you know, I am running for Congress, and I've got several things here. First, I want to remove $5 trillion from the national debt. These are my top 10 priorities. Okay, I want to propose the 28th Amendment for transparency in financial incentives, and essentially, I want to get rid of DEI and any other incentive program that government has that is unconstitutional and goes against our founding principles. I want to secure America's digital infrastructure by requiring PLCs be built domestically. Tuberculosis and polio screening for all migrants as well as food workers, and this includes the people working on the farms. Five-pillar blueprint for the empowered local governments, and this is where I want every local government to have an idea of what they need funding for their 5 pillars, which is infrastructure, housing, jobs, food, and fuel. Okay, so that's the 5 pillars. Protecting our law enforcement through the Reasonable Operational Space Act, and this is where I want to have a law that protesters can only get so close to law enforcement before it's considered battery. And I'm not saying protesters need to go to jail. I'm saying that if a protester gets too close to a law enforcement person, that law enforcement person is within his or her rights to put that person under arrest, detain that person, and take that person away for acting in an unreasonable fashion. You can let them go 5-6 hours later, but the law enforcement person needs to have his or her safety observed. Okay, so requiring early measles vaccination. And I've told this before in a presentation. The measles is the most important vaccination that you can have. Single most important thing. Because whenever you get the measles, it resets your immune system. So, yeah, it's the single most important vaccine you can get. The American Talent First Act to ensure American workers are prioritized for American jobs, and this is because for a period of time, the United States government was incentivizing corporations to go overseas and recruit them. Immunotherapy for cancer research, and this is where the body's own immune system is used to fight against cancer, which is an amazing thing. And also in-person voting. Recently, Oregon has taken in-person voting away from the options, and I think that every citizen should have the option of in-person voting. It's got nothing to do with voter safety or election fraud. It just has to do with personal choice. The American citizens should have the choice to do in-person voting if the American citizen wants to do that. So those are my top 10 list, and Yeah, like I said, make America great again. Yeah, I am a Republican, and I think I follow the MAGA agenda, but I would really I'd have to look a lot closer. I do want to make America great again, but I want to make Oregon's 6th Congressional District America's greatest congressional district, and that is my primary goal. Mosk Dag is my primary goal, to make Oregon's 6th Congressional District America's greatest congressional district. That's what I want to do, and that's how I'm going to do it, providing jobs for Oregon, providing jobs for the people in our 6th Congressional District by just doing everything within the power of a representative to get federal funds to our district so that we can work on things in our district that can have a positive effect on the rest of the United States, because that is ultimately the job of every representative that goes to Congress. So once again, now this is the end of my presentation here. I appreciate you following me. My name is Thomas W. Timbrooks. The W stands for Wayne, by the way, but whatever. I'm running for the U.S. House of Representatives. That's the one in Washington, D.C. Not state, but federal representative, okay? For Oregon's 6th Congressional District, for the Republican Party, I want to make Oregon's 6th Congressional District America's greatest congressional district. So thank you very much for listening to me and giving me your time, and take care of yourselves.